That real hip hop.
Y'all know how we do.
You're listening to Philly's own Matthias, aka Mr. 16 Bars. That real hip hop.
Try to tell people that Philly is a special breed. They hate to see us on top, they hate to see us on. They hate to see us come up, they hate we on. They hate the moves that we make because it's made to break them. We give them knowledge on tracks and hope our words can save them. I guess it's hard to get props when you know you lesser. So we right on your heels, I hope you feel the pressure. Rappers taking a roll, my shoes that never fit them. Before you come at a king.
Walking cane, Lord, Lord, I got them Browns Ferry blues. But I throwed it away and went to town to see that woman, and now he's down. Lord, Lord, I got them Browns Ferry blues.
We're now joined by the king of the banjo, Mr. Tony Trischka. Tony, welcome to Philly on the Rise. How are you, man?
Thank you. I'm great. Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure.
You are welcome. We are glad to have you indeed. So your love for the banjo has taken you around the world. It's taken you to Broadway and it's taken you over to Japan. Tell us about your exploit, your accomplishments on Broadway.
Broadway. Let's see. I've been very fortunate. I've done very few theatrical things, but every one of them has been very high tone, if you'd care to put it that way. I was first real involvement was in something called The Robber Bridegroom, which was taken from a short story by Eudora Welty, and it was on Broadway. We did 2 months out in LA, and then on Broadway for 5 months, I guess it was, in '76. And then I was involved with a production called Foxfire with Hume Cronin and Jessica Tandy and Keith Carradine in Denver and LA, a show that was put together by Hume Cronin. And then we did a CBS production of it with John Denver. We got to be John Denver's backup band, and then worked in Shakespeare in the Park through the Public Theater in New York City in a Shakespearean play called As You Like It, which was set in, I think, North Carolina or East Carolina, I think is how it was, somewhere in the 1800s, with music by Steve Martin. And those have been my 3 involvements in theater, all of which were very, upper crust. So I've been very fortunate to be able to do those.
Amazing, amazing. And your gifts and talents with the banjo have taken you to Japan. What's your fondest memory of that tour of Japan?
Wow. Boy, let's see. Just in general, this was in 1978, I want to say. And at that point, bluegrass was really big in Japan. And we would come out of the van to go into the theater, and there'd be paparazzi snapping our pictures, and we were playing to crowds of like 1,000 people. But perhaps the most intense experience is the morning after we arrived, we took the bullet train to Hiroshima and went to the site of the library building, which was the only building left standing after the bomb was dropped in 1945. And so the shell of the roof of the building was still there. So I would say that was a pretty intense experience, to say the least. So that's another very strong memory I have of that trip.
Yeah, I could imagine, but I'm quite sure you ate some good cuisine. You didn't go all the way across the world and get a McDonald's cheeseburger. You had to have something.
No. We had so much sushi and sashimi and just all sorts of amazing, noodles and yeah. I know this band that came from Nashville to Paris. We were over there, and all they wanted to have the entire time they were in Paris was McDonald's, because that was what they were used to. Going to Japan, when we first arrived, I thought, God, I've never been to this part of the world. It's amazing. We're in Japan. And we went to the Daiichi district of Tokyo, which is where we were staying in this hotel, for a nice hotel. And as we're driving into town, there's a Kentucky Colonel's, there's a KFC, and there's a McDonald's. Like, God, they're everywhere. You can't escape this. Culinary imperialism.
You know, what's interesting is I'm quite sure the McDonald's and the KFC are still over there today in 2024.
Oh yeah, I'm sure, and more. It's proliferating. So,
Correct, correct. You've written
yeah.
over 15 books, tons of
Hmm.
videos and DVDs, and in 2009, you opened an online banjo school.
Right. It's a school through a company called Artist Works, and it's a wonderful setup the way they've done it. They've got all the bluegrass instruments there. They've got a jazz program, a classical program. I think I was the third person to join many years ago, as you say. And basically, when I first went out to Napa, California, to film these lessons, I filmed about 100 lessons from absolute beginner, how you hold the banjo, to very advanced things and everything in between. And I've done over 50 interviews from everyone from Steve Martin to Bela Fleck and just all the major banjo players. And the really nice thing about it is people can send in videos and I respond to them. It goes into a queue and then I respond to them so people can get one-on-one critiques. And I'm very friendly. I don't critique in a nasty way. So, and it really helped during COVID when I lost all the gigs and all my workshops and everything. I had this online thing to keep me going. So it's a wonderful program that they've got.
Bluegrass is your first love, but you've crossed over into other genres of music.
Yes, that's true. I listen to all kinds of music. I had an electric band. Well, actually, on my very first album, uh, which was mostly standard instrumentation for bluegrass, guitar, mandolin, fiddle, banjo, bass, that sort of thing, and dobro. And I had one tune on there with drums, and electric guitar, and bass clarinet, because I was also into jazz, and there was a guy named Eric Dolphy who played with John Coltrane and played bass clarinet, and so I wanted some of that on there. And then in the '90s, I had an electric band for 3 or 4 years and recorded a couple of albums for Rounder Records with that band, with saxophone, electric guitar, bass, and drums. So yeah, I like all different kinds of music, and one of the things I'm doing besides this Earl Scruggs tribute called Earl Jam that I'm doing currently, also simultaneously I'm putting music to Emily Dickinson poems, and so I have widely varied interests.
Do you like the direction where bluegrass is headed? Because now we have newgrass.
Hmm. Well, Newgrass has been around. There was a group called Newgrass Revival that started, I'd say, in the 1970s. And so Newgrass isn't, it's not a new thing, but there's always been this tension between traditional bluegrass, which was created by Bill Monroe, the father of bluegrass music, and then young whippersnappers, such as myself in the 70s, trying different things, fancier chords or putting rock and roll feels to bluegrass tunes, that sort of thing. But I think everything's sort of mellowed out now, and it's all under one big tent, if you want. But was for many years a kind of a tension between those two schools.
What did you do for PBS?
For PBS, I worked with a friend of mine, Mark Fields, on a banjo documentary called "Give Me the Banjo," which was on PBS. You could tell me better than I can remember exactly what year that was. Let's say 10 years ago, 12 years ago,
Thereabouts,
something
yeah.
like that, thereabouts. And it was approximately a 2 hour retrospective on the history of the banjo from its African roots through enslaved people who were the first people to play it, bringing their instruments, in some cases, or recreating on these shores from West Africa, and through the parlor aspects of the banjo, and on through bluegrass and newgrass.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's go back to your childhood for a sec because somehow or another you told your parents it was raining in the house. What was that all about?
Oh, yes, when I was very young, I took it upon myself in a brilliant stroke of genius to empty our vacuum cleaner, the contents of our vacuum cleaner, into the upstairs sink, turn on the water, and then forget about it and go downstairs. And I'm downstairs with my parents, and water starts dripping from the ceiling. And I say, "Mommy, Daddy, it's raining inside." And one of my fondest memories. I'm not sure if my parents felt the same way at the time, but
I'm quite sure they didn't. Is that what you were as a child?
probably
Were you kind of
not.
a
Probably
prankster, a
not.
jokester as a child?
I haven't tried it since.
Okay, okay.
That's the good news.
Understood. You did touch on Earl Jam a little bit earlier, so tell us more about that project and what it's about.
Okay, Earl Jam is well, I fell in love with the music of Earl Scruggs in 1963 when I first started playing the banjo. That's what first attracted me to the banjo. And lo, these many years later, this was maybe 3 years ago, I was working with a gentleman who had been at these jam sessions with John Hartford, who wrote Gentle on My Mind, and Earl Scruggs, the father of bluegrass banjo. And the two of them jammed somewhere between the mid 80s and the mid 90s. And John Hartford recorded over 200 songs at these jam sessions on a cheap cassette machine. And this friend of mine happened to be at some of these jam sessions, and John Hartford said, if my house ever burns down, all this music will be lost. So he gave copies to my friend. His name is Bob Pekel up in Syracuse, New York. And Bob turned around and sent me a thumb drive of all these tunes. So here I am with 200 tunes that no one's ever heard before, very rare recordings of tunes that Earl Scruggs never recorded in a studio. And I started transcribing these, writing them out note for note to figure out what he was playing. And Earl was doing these amazing things that we'd never heard him do before, crazy syncopations and playing tunes we'd never heard before, such as Chinese Breakdown or Here Comes the Bride, and a whole host of other things, Lady Madonna by the Beatles. And I decided I want to do an album of this. And a friend of mine who started Rounder Records, which is a major independent label that has Alison Krauss on it and George Thorogood, but lots of bluegrass in my earliest albums were on that label. He had started a new label called Down the Road, and he took it upon himself to, or we approached him about doing an album of this music, wherein I would play all the tunes that Earl Scruggs had played, or 15 in this case, and I would play every note that I would play for the leads would be note for note what Earl played from the transcriptions I'd made, and then I would fill out the tunes with full bands with a guy named Billy Strings, who's very hot on the bluegrass market, Molly Tuttle, Vince Gill, big country star, Del McCoury, and on, with a whole host of backing musicians. And it's just been nominated for an award by the IBMA, which is the International Bluegrass Music Association. So the project's doing very well, and I'm traveling with a band that does a lot of this music. We do an overview of Earl's career and then play some tunes from the jams, which is what we'll be doing at the Philadelphia Folk Festival.
And speaking of that Philadelphia Folk Festival, you are a Jersey guy, but you'll be crossing the bridge for that festival. Dare I say that Philadelphia is your second home?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Philadelphia is your second home. You'll be coming over here for that folk festival. You're a Jersey guy. Yeah. Dare I say Philly?
Yeah, I'm in the neighborhood. I'm in the neighborhood.
All right. So that means you enjoy yourself a good cheesesteak, a good Philly cheesesteak.
Oh, I would. My wife and I and our kids went to Philadelphia to see the Salvador Dali exhibition, and just being in Philadelphia a bunch of years ago, and we did a trifecta. I can't remember. We were directed to the best pizza place. This is all in South Philadelphia. Yeah. Best pizza, best French fries, best cheesesteak. We went one right from the other, and then needed to get some Tums afterwards, but it was worth it. Well worth it. A very fond memory of being in Philadelphia. But I've gone to the folk festival since maybe 1965 or 66, and then performed there a couple of times during the 1980s and maybe somewhere in the 90s also. It's been a while now since I've been back, but I know didn't happen last year, but I'm sure glad it's back this year because it's such a great festival.
It is a great festival. We can't wait to see you there. Congratulations on your career, an amazing career, so many different accomplishments, and we are quite sure there is more to come. Thanks for joining us on the program, Tony.
Thank you so much. It's a huge pleasure to be here and great talking to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. We'll talk to you soon.